on the fishing boats as they were then, it isn't at all comfortable. I mean, it wouldn't be comfortable even on one of the new monsters, but there's a lot of noise because there's the noise of the engine, a lot of smells and things, and you're reduced to a very primal state, and you are in this zone, and the motion of the water anyway is very dislocating, and it goes on so long, and it really is so uncomfortable that when you get ashore, you can't actually immediately return to whatever it was you were before. I think I couldn't have pursued the enterprise at all if I hadn't actually done virtually everything that they do within the bounds of my female frame. But yes, because I know what a full day is like. I know what happens when the weather changes. I know, what an intense activity it is from the very moment you leave the beach, and the concentration that's required, and then all the work that follows. So I wouldn't have felt morally okay about it if I hadn't actually gone into it. But it's the repetition of the jobs. So the more I researched and drew, the more I knew what to expect and how long I would get at it. The drawing was because I had made a decision that I wouldn't use photography, and that it would have to be the slow, long look. What I was looking at wasn't much, and what of it I kind of made of it wasn't very much. It was just the back view of somebody leaning, and I was not that far away, but far away enough for them not to notice what I was doing, which was very important to me in the early stages. An inner compulsion to trace something that was stirring, I suppose, and it was a totally unremarkable drawing, but it held what the charge in some way, and it was just on a scrap of paper. It was a talisman which I took off from. I found a door, I found the way in. I suppose that the seasons change and the pace of things changes, and it comes about that you need to leave it or move it to another level. The next challenge would be the very hard one of the abstraction of dealing with all the material and regurgitating it, if you like. The demand, once paint was involved, seemed to be that it needed to have a scale, because I was in the great outdoors, and a drawing creates its own space in a way that painting doesn't. I needed the arena, really, to encapsulate something of my experience. The whole idea of corralling this vision of mine within a frame, even a piece of battening around the edges, I couldn't bear to think of trapping whatever it was I was trying to make, trapping it by the way it was framed. I had to make them, the structures, before I painted on them. They couldn't just be organic and find their shape. I had to make a cool, hard decision each time. Having committed to that, the carpentry, I stuck with it. I can hardly remember a single occasion where I had miscalculated the shape of the arena. It doesn't have edges in this miraculous way. It's a floating thing, as is used often in illustration, I suppose. You have text, you have an image that swims. Yes, there are lots of instances of a generic human being, but for me the special thing was the getting to know how different these people were from one another, and the specialness of each individual. I felt it was the least I could do to honour their existence by naming them. For me, I could see the heroism in the everyday. That's dangerous territory. The heroics are in there, but they're not overblown. There's so many pitfalls. There's seduction of colour on its own, and the beautifying of something which is actually very rough and often awkward and ugly and uncomfortable. The minute it's enshrined in paint, it can denature the true essence of this experience. So it was a hard struggle to straddle those extremes. Well, they used to say to me, "Aren't you going to finish it?" If they did bother to look over their shoulder at what I was doing. I think some of them did find it intriguing enough to go to the exhibition at the museum, the first one. And I was encouraged that I had actually given a true account. The basic nature of the enterprise, the activity can't change. The shape of things changes, and the people change. They die, or some of them grow up and go into it. And it's still the same gamble every time they go off in a boat. A stencil or something, because it's identical lettering with the same odd spacing. Whiting spelt wrongly. There, a couple of sea bass. And I love these rotting carcasses of bulldozers. They're like great dinosaurs, slowly decaying on the beach. I suppose if I'd gone on, they might have made more of an appearance, but in fact, it's in the painting called Unending that the dinosaur appears for the first time in the painting, I suppose. Yes, this is our shed, and it is in the painting, which actually has an upside down fresh fish sign in it as well, and my ex-partner kneeling in front of the doorway. The carpets were always a feature, and they still are. There'll probably be museum pieces, the ones that remain, because I think carpet design has probably moved on since then. But, well, actually, quite interestingly, early on, because I was so desperate to just fix on the human beings and what they were doing, I didn't want to waste my precious drawing time on too much of the detail of and so I actually got a friend who used to come out and draw all the bits and pieces as still life, and I got her to supply me with her drawings of these details, and I used to use those when I needed props, as it were, because I couldn't be bothered to draw them myself. Neat and tidy, this one. They always were. But of course, when I first started drawing and painting them, they didn't have these net haulers because they hauled by hand. That was why there were so many people around, because the work was just so intensive. It needed lots of people. So I can remember when the first net haulers arrived, someone was fishing here who, I'm not sure what his connection was, but they used to call him the Professor, and he'd been to Scotland and seen the net haulers that were being used up there, and installed one on his boat, and they all made a lot of fun of him and the whole device, but of course very soon they all had to get them, and it meant that it changed the actual balance of the boat. They had to shift the engine house and everything else to accommodate the weight, but it makes life a lot easier, obviously. And they're actually fiberglass even when they look like wood, because they found that this shape is very suited to this beach, especially if it wasn't going to be a big boat. So they used one as a model, and there are several now that are fiberglass that are just the same model. The actual furniture has changed so much. All these plastic boxes and polystyrene floats, that they were natural recyclers, the fishermen, because they haven't got a chandlers. They have to make all these. Well, I love the mess, because it isn't a mess, and that's one of the things I realised, that what looks like chaos is organised chaos. Everything that's here has its reason for being here and its purpose, and even when it's outlived its purpose and it's decaying, it still has a purpose. I watched a cable break only a few months ago when they were trying to get one of the boats ashore, and it wasn't that rough, but the boat had got washed slightly sideways, and that makes it very difficult, and suddenly the wire went ping, and I was sitting quite close. I felt the ricochet of the pebbles as it went. Everybody jumps back, and it took about 3 goes to actually find the right thing to haul it up the very steep bank that had formed. So the danger is always there. It is theatre. It's the stage set, in fact. I don't know if I was working now, whether I'd have the patience to deal with the still life aspect of it. I don't know. I still think it's the human event that really grabs my attention. Well, there's always a definite mood when the human beings are around, and obviously that changes radically. I mean, the whole feeling, the dynamic when all the boats are going off at the right moment at high water, that is a very different mood from when they're coming ashore and dealing with the catch. And And then, yes, the winter period where there might be many days when people can't go to sea. And of course, in the past, they were able to have the bonfires on the beach, which were to burn up old nets and get rid of rubbish, but they were also a focus to stand around and yarn, as they call it. And summertime, where again the fishing isn't really, sometimes it gets very thin, as they say. That's when the boats have to be repaired and the numbers repainted, and things just need attending to. Things need attending to all the time, really. The bright orange and the bright yellow were a good foil to all the other more natural colours of decay, rust and weathered wood. She's very rare, Felicity. She deserves some better lettering than that, actually. It's like a great whale, isn't it, this boat? Amazing. You're comparing it with the archetypal small wooden boat, and you can't get that image out of your head. That it's the same family, but it's yeah, one of the golden oldies, really. And the boat too. Now that really is, that's more like an ending, isn't it? That one is ready to go if someone's sort of, they do die on the beach, because where else would they die? Because I saw that the tractors would change everything, and the fact that there is a decaying boat in the background, a decaying wooden boat, and I knew I couldn't use the oil paint anymore, because I was already quite ill from the toxicity of the materials I'd been using all my life. Maybe embraced a whole new era of, you know, what was to come, which is all this, the steel boats and the much more mechanised thing that it has become. But I felt it was a moment to bow out of that particular entrancement. It's like a sort of end piece.